Welcome, everyone. I'm Amy Seeley, president of Seeley Test Pros and LEAP, helping students to succeed on all kinds of tests from 8th grade to grad school throughout Ohio.
And I'm Mike Bergen, president of Chariot Learning, helping students with school and life based out of Rochester, New York.
Between the two of us today, we have over 60 years of experience at the highest levels of the test preparation and supplemental education industries.
We both love to talk and learn about the latest issues in education, testing, and admissions. So let's get down to tests and the rest. The fascinating topic we want to explore today is AI and the college admissions process. But first, let's meet our special guest, Sam Bernstein.
After graduating from Georgetown University in 2018, Sam Bernstein spent 3 years working at Maverick Capital, an NYC-based equity hedge fund, where his time volunteering for Maverick's charitable foundation and his experiences seeing the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted educational inequity and motivated him to quit his job. As a result, he co-founded Loper, a free and easy way for high schoolers to find the right college, compare options, and stay organized throughout the college application process. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for having me. Really looking forward to the conversation, and good to catch up and see you both.
We agree that we are also looking forward to this conversation and that it is good to catch up. So before we talk about AI and the college admissions process, we do want to catch up, find out what you've been up to. For longtime listeners, you'll recognize Sam as our guest in episode 360 to talk about finding your college fit. Sam, what have you been up to since then?
Yeah, it's been a fun few years. I will say this, impressive that I was already on episode 360 when we spoke a few years ago. That was certainly episode one for me.
Actually,
episode,
just
one and a half for
worthy
story.
of note, that was about 300 episodes ago.
Oh my Lord.
Isn't that crazy?
That is impressive. What have I been up to? How about what have you guys been up to 300 guests later? Oh my God.
Don't worry, we talk about ourselves all the time.
Oh, we do.
Good. Well, it's because there's a lot to talk about. It's interesting. But we, on the Loper front, 300 episodes later, where are we? In some ways, it's really positive in that there's more of the same in doing what we're doing. And I think, the product, if you were to pick it up now, mobile app looks totally different, but the core experience of we want to help facilitate more introspection from students, think about how can we make this more fun, more gamified as they really take the first steps in their college process. And then that core experience for us of matching them with best fit pathways, that's still what we're doing. And so I think for us, that's been really exciting with all the progress, all the changes, to take a half step back and say why we wanted to start the company and the problem that we saw and what we're trying to help students solve is still there. And that I think for us it's nice that North Star hasn't really changed in terms of progress. We now have 200,000 students create accounts on the app, which we're really, really pleased with. And we've meaningfully expanded our partner network on the college side. So we try and work with colleges to create institutional profiles that are designed for teenagers today. Media gallery, Snapchat story style content, little mini quizzes. We have all of those pieces on the app. And I think the reception from both students in those colleges and how can we better personalize our messaging has been really positive. So a lot of pieces that we've improved there. And then I think the last two small pieces of note I'd bring up is one, we're bringing non-college pathways onto the app, something that we've always wanted to do and is really exciting for us. So gap year programs, apprenticeship offerings, trade schools. So we're seeing even amongst that four-year college young audience, it's downloading our app for that reason. They're still trying to understand what those options are. So that piece is exciting. And then starting to have some resources a little further down the process, what we call an application center, and something this spring we're going to be relaunching.
That's terrific. This is probably after the fact, but can you just give like a 60-second description of what Loper is?
Absolutely. I realize I'm just jumping right in like everyone else is remembering 300 episodes later. Yeah, Loper, it's a free mobile app for students. We match them to best fit pathways after high school. When 300 episodes ago, we would have said something along the lines of it looks like a dating app for college. And I think it's still a good analogy in the sense of as students explore, we learn about them. Yeah. We're going to match them with best fit pathways, personalize why it's a good fit for them based off all these interests on the app. Or it looks a little different now is it's a feed, it's a scrolling feed versus swiping on prompts, still reacting to these. So users react to interest-driven prompts, and this content from colleges, general questions, multiple choice questions, there's mini games. All of those are powering our matching algorithm. So Loper recommends schools, students can save those, build a list, research those schools through Loper, and then that's where that application center piece is coming in, where the dates, the deadlines, the essays. I know I talked with an IEC yesterday who, when talking about how they introduce Loper to their students, just having a tool on their phone where, as a counselor, when you say, hey, apply to 25 schools, there's going to be a lot of work that goes into it. Having something where it's like, oh yeah, when I say it's a lot of work, it's going to be these 36 different essays and this much dollar cost. Now think about traveling, of just almost serving as serving for exposure in that front and a different messaging angle. It's something where I think we want to get on the front end of that process for students.
Well, certainly from what you're saying, right? Like the high tech nature, really, that the college admissions process has become. And certainly in the last few years, we've all seen sort of the emergence of AI and how it's changing everything everywhere. But can you share with a little bit, how would you say AI is changing the way students are searching for colleges and just navigating this application process?
Yeah, I think that, one, in it, risk of stating the obvious here, instead of going onto Google, you're now having students whose first choice, maybe you go ChatGPT, just to stick with that model. And when you think about, well, how does that change that? It's less now about, I think when you Google something there, yes, you're looking for an answer, but there's still a degree of search, comb through, process information. I think students are really starting with the answer of like, tell me what the school I should apply to. Tell me what to do here. Tell me this answer. Will I get in? And they're looking for, I think, finality and from the very start. And I think that's really tough because this just is not a process that you can have a final answer presented. I could tell a student, what, I don't think there's one right school for a student. I could try and tell them that. I could try and tell them, hey, here's the answer. It's not gonna, I think, it doesn't facilitate that type of introspection, the conversations with your parents that are so critical, with counselors. And I think that's where I'm a little bit concerned, is like, you're now even further trying to just jump the gun and shortcut this process. So that's, I think, the biggest piece that I see, where it's like students from the start.
That seems really dangerous. And I can imagine that conversation plays out millions of times a year, but in the past, it's a teen turns to a counselor, a school counselor, an IEC, an educator, and says, what school should I go to? Can I get in? And of course, they're going to give very nuanced,
Well, that's
personalized,
because humans, there's
hedged
the
answers.
human part, right? I think
Right.
what's funny, what you're saying is, and kind of, Sam, I kind of picked up there, was thinking about this in terms of, yeah, you can go to places like ChatGPT and ask these questions, but we also know that the admissions process, the readers are humans, at least as of this date.
Well, don't say the readers are human.
But I'm saying at this point, at least, humans are still, there's the variable of college admissions, that is the humans that are doing the reading, or the humans that are going to share things with you that you're not, the ChatGPT just as certainly is not nuanced enough to share, at least as of yet, right?
No, totally agree with that. And I think that one other piece that our CTO likes to remind me when we're using AI, just for any sort of productivity piece, is that he'll describe it as like, the AI thinks that you are a god. The AI thinks that you know everything, that you are right. And prompting, it's a classic, quality of input in will be the quality of output out. I think it's very dangerous when you have students who are looking for an answer on the other side of this, and you can end up working a model to give you the answer that you want here when it's something that is more subjective.
The
So there are a
answer
lot
that
of
you
great
want.
places. Yeah, but you get towards the answer you want. I just think you're totally right to bring up the human side. It's just a process. A lot of this is managing emotions. I don't think that it's positions well to manage emotions. And you could have a conversation with ChatGPT that runs over the course of a year. That's not really how we use the tool. And it's like, this isn't something that you're just gonna get on, April 10th when we're recording this, the final answer, and that's that, and then move on. It's a process.
So I think what you're suggesting is there are places to use AI and there are places maybe not to. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what are the yeses for it and what are the nos for it?
Yeah, and I avoided, on how AI is changing, I avoided one that is right at the top, but it's definitely a big no, which is no, you should not be having AI write your essay for you.
I think we're all
Another
in
at risk
agreement
of
about
state of
that.
the obvious. No, you should not do that. And for many, many reasons, that the ethics, equality, you kind of go down the list. So no, don't do that. Yes, people are using that. It is not very typically not very difficult to figure out those cases. But essays bring up to a good example, and I'll go back on the search side. So powerful for brainstorming, facilitating conversations. And that's where I wish right now students, I think they're approaching it looking for finality, but using essays. Man, what a great way to brainstorm essay topics. What a great way to brainstorm hooks. To just have and there are some great tools that do so, but have a conversation there. And it's really just getting to a better starting point. We're so hard, it's tough to sit down. And I think it's the same thing on the search side, where I think AI is not going to be great as recommending a list for an individual student. It's going to be biased towards large schools, towards highly selective schools when you just use a foundational model there. But what a great way to have a conversation. These are some of the things that I'm interested in. Can you tell me a school it's a good fit? Can you tell me why it's a good fit? And just understand how are different ways that I can approach this. Really good to get that conversation started.
That's a great point, Sam. When we look at the value of AI as it stands today, understanding all of the factors that go into understanding yourself, understanding the person you're working with, understanding that AI might be prone to making up answers when the answers don't actually exist. We never want to take the human element out of any aspect of this, particularly not something like the essay or something like school choice, which is all about the human at the center of it. But as a starting point, start the search, sift through a bunch of schools based on a bunch of different factors, brainstorm an outline for one kind of essay, but never count on that final product to be the final product.
Yeah. And it's with the final product piece. I think it's very, yes, could you have AI help write an essay that a human would not detect as being written by AI? Yeah, yes, you absolutely can. I'm sure that you can. It's not easy. That's at this current state, you have to be very effective with prompt engineering and honestly spend a lot of time on that process. At that point, just write the essay as well is like the other piece where I think it's you think about it as, oh, this will save me all this time, shortcut all these things. Actually, you end up effectively using it for that final product. It's just going to take longer. Is the
Yeah,
other
you're
piece,
totally right.
and you're sitting there, and the stress and the concern. It's one of those pieces I think it gets lost sometimes. It's like, oh, AI is going to write your essay for you. I challenge someone. Go try and have it write your essay for you. Don't as a high school student maybe do this, but if you're a counselor and concerned, go try and see and be like, oh yeah, okay, I just spent 20 minutes and I feel like I'm back at square one, or this is nothing close to a polished essay. That last 10% is really, really hard to do.
So, what are the AI powered tools out there that you think maybe the tools that students or parents or counselors or IECs should be aware of?
Yeah, I think I'd be remiss not to mention Loper here. There is and where I think it is something that we do a little bit differently when people think of AI tools is it's not just a chat style interface, and it's really more on the our back end and personalizing the match for students. And I think something that we're really proud of doing there, where it's not, hey, this really feels like air quotes here AI versus just powering that personalized experience. But
One
I
quick
think in
question
term,
that
yeah,
if I'm remembering correctly about Loper, if I remember, when you do the search, you don't necessarily see the college, you see the criteria. Like am I remembering correctly that like
yeah,
one of the
you
benefits
are,
so that
yeah,
so if you were locked into a name or like a brand name, one of the benefits of Loper was at least trying to remove that. So you're purely seeing where the match could be, not the name, so that somebody
mm,
isn't like influenced by that. Am I remembering that correctly?
you are remembering that correctly. What's funny is in those 300 episodes, we have now de-anonymized the
Ah,
matches because we got so much feedback from students, and
okay.
I still think that we do a good job on the exposure piece of not just having brand name schools show up and trying to do shows more, but it got to the point where the number of emails that we were getting and messages within the
Okay.
app around, can I see the school's name? Can I see the school's name? And it just reached a point where it's like, okay, we can't we want to change user behavior, but at some
Yeah.
point we
Well, full
can't force that
disclosure,
change.
I think the timing of Loper timed with a daughter of mine who was in the college admissions process.
Yeah,
So that was the last time I investigated Loper because obviously I had a kid. I had a kid who was in the right age bracket to
yeah,
use it. So that's interesting to hear about, yeah, that change because it's
yeah.
an
And
interesting
it's been
thing.
it's probably 270 episodes later that we made. It's been a fairly recent change, and the
Yeah.
feedback's been positive, and one where I think there's a healthy amount of letting go on our side, where it's like we may have beliefs or reasons for why we want a product to look a
Yeah.
certain way,
Sure.
but we got to just keep talking to high school students and our
So
users.
what are some
But
of the
holding, yes,
other lesser
holding.
known or less
Yeah, I
valuable tools
would.
than Loper
I
out there?
would definitely not want to say either lesser known or less valuable on some of these because they're quite important. Maybe I spend less time on personally. Would be but one, and I think one that I definitely would not say lesser known here, but a company called SAI, ESAI. I think I know the founder, Julia. She's really thoughtful, really sharp. One of those. This is not going to. I say I will not write your essay for you, but great different tools around generating hooks, around building ideas for different prompts, and it's a mainly market. There are K-12 offerings that they'll have for high schools, and then mainly marketing parents as well. I think she does a good job with her product. So that's one. There's a number of different tools that I think are pushing to manage like personalized plans and more process side. I actually just learned of one, really impressed. I think it's launching soon called College Craft AI that I would check out. I think you can sign up for the wait list. Really sharp team. The founder there was a counselor at a charter school in Atlanta or just outside of Atlanta. And I believe her husband is successfully exited tech entrepreneur. So really sharp. Just loved how they were talking about different pieces in the process, and where I think it will also be able to support counselors. And then I always like to bring up there's a number of different study tools. And I think, we focus on the college process, but I think grades are such an important piece of the college process. Sometimes they get talked about because it's just at this baseline. There's Turbo Learn is one. If you go on TikTok, you're gonna get if you're a high schooler on TikTok, you're gonna see 10 of these ads within the first 2 minutes on the app. But there are a lot of these different AI powered study tools, flashcard tools. There's a company called Jungle, but they work a little more for current college students and grad students. But those are such good tools. The investment of a couple dollars a month can be a game changer for families. And I just saw one that I can't personally attest to that helps with SAT prep called Linus. They just raised money last week, and interesting to see where they go on the SAT prep side. But I think with all of those, I'll say study and learning tools, it is a great way to get additional practice, one, but also just like a baseline of where you are. So I think they're fun, they're personalized, and just gonna be a different way for content to be put in front of
So
you.
yeah, so there's basically a tool for everything out there. You
Yes.
shared multiple tools for essay generation, you shared a study app. I assume that there's going to be things, basically anything that somebody's looking for, there's probably an AI tool for that. And I think there's actually a link to a site called There's an AI tool for that. So before we go down that rabbit hole any further, let's pull back and talk about not from the student side, but from the educator side, the counselor side. We're talking about school counselors, we're talking about private college counselors. How can AI support them? I think that there's a lot of conversation about how the colleges themselves are employing AI. How can professionals shepherding the flow of students to colleges also get in on some of that productivity enhancement?
Yeah, it's a great question, because you're totally right in that there's a lot for the individual student and there's a lot on the college side. And I'll hold aside here investments that are going to come from probably the district itself into like a full suite. The companies that I think of, Magic School AI and School AI, both have suites that are sold in the K-12 schools. And as an individual counselor, it's like, hey, you might have that product and there might be some use cases. But if you don't, it's not like you're going to
Yeah,
snap your
they might
fingers.
be underfunded. That's been known to
Yeah,
happen on the school side.
yeah, it's exactly. It's, every once in a while underfunded. No, it's yeah, that the whole different episode on that topic. But I think as an individual counselor in terms of managing your caseloads more effectively, a couple of things. One is AI can really help with prioritization. And this is almost job agnostic, but I think can be super helpful with counselors. Like if you're just like, I don't really know what to do, I have 6 different things that are going on, 12 different students I should help, copying and pasting something into a prompt into ChatGPT and asking, help me prioritize this. And you can look up, there's great prompting techniques that can really help you get the right output there. That can be a lifesaver when you're running between a bunch of different things, using it for notes where great AI powered note takers, if it's a virtual conversation with students, that can be just having that summary. I don't have to worry about taking notes. Even if you take scratch notes, there are multiple tools where you could actually, even if you don't have a transcript, upload those notes, have them organize it for you, and then keep a running list. Using it to track different reminders out of all of that, really, really helpful. So I think a lot of on the counselor side, as I think about it, is how can I, without adding a bunch of different process to myself, just make sure that I'm staying on top of these different checklists is an area that I would personally spend time investing in. That's like my initial starting point with managing your caseload is how do I prioritize and make sure within that caseload I'm spending time on the right students.
And you're suggesting that the general models, like the Chat GPT or something similar, it is so deep that it can provide specialized help for someone, for a counselor just asking for a tool like that. You don't have to go to something tailor made for that application.
No, you don't. And I think, you often don't need to. I know I listed out a bunch of these individual tools. You don't, the foundational models are really, really good. And you should play around with what ChatGPT, they have deep research if you're doing deep research tasks. I think a lot of what I mentioned earlier in terms of that brainstorming and intersection that students do, I think counselors also spend some time doing that as well. It's not bad. I think you go to turn to a foundational model and you got, 5 schools on a list with your student. Do a little research. If you haven't heard one of them, use ChatGPT to do the research and check that out. But for things that are in terms of like general workforce and productivity, those foundational models will be more than sufficient for you.
So, like, let's speculate into the future before we get to
Yes.
episode 900 and you come back, right? But what do you think a student first future will look like in an AI driven college admissions landscape? Where are
I
we
like that
going?
phrase, student first.
Student first.
I do as well. So when I think student first year, I think about what are the pieces that cause the most stress and frustration for a student. And I think the lack of transparency in the process is the absolute biggest right now. And there's a bunch of different sides of the coin to this. Financial side, what are my chances to get in? The fact that I wait so long on all of these. And I'd like to think a student first future in an AI-driven admissions landscape either has some combination of you're going to get very quick response times in terms of not necessarily a final application, but at least something. Like I don't see a reason why there can't be workflows that are built, something of just like, hey, you are within a week of submitting an application somewhere. If it's just a rejection, like I'd love to get that answer back or something of like, hey, you're being reviewed. Hey, this is where it's going to be, something back that's quicker on. Here's like a rough price range. We're going to need to validate all of these different pieces from you. But just that little like, hey, okay, this is the range. This is what I'm looking at. My application is being reviewed. My application is not being reviewed for these reasons. That turnaround time and transparency, I think, will be very, very nice for students. I don't think there's this balance of AI is processing me as an applicant. I don't think that's the direction that we're going. I think in some ways you want more trust that there's a human that's actually on the other end of the process. And that's where, how can we build that trust and know that there's human and have capacity for humans at the other end? Stripping down a bunch of manual tasks and a bunch of time and have those processes automated. So that's like that's the direction that I see this going.
So what's interesting is that we're talking about a student first process, but your response highlights the fact that the college admissions process is a college first oriented
Yeah.
process, right? And that the improvements, any improvements in this process have to flow from institutions themselves.
I think I really don't see another way for this to happen, to have a more student first landscape, because as I think about an individual student here, if I close my eyes and think about what could be this, perfect streamlined search, discovery, application process, unless you're telling me that, going back to, a couple questions ago, that AI should be writing these essays and should be doing the work for students, there's some amount of effort that we believe is appropriate for a student to go through in that process. And I don't think, maybe there are some places that I'd say we can strip that out, but something like the Common App is really easy to use. I think it's never been easier to apply to most colleges. And, I will reserve judgment on how many supplements should a school have. And I'm sure some have too many and it's too painful, but hey, it makes sense. You want to apply to a highly selective school. They need something to evaluate you as a candidate for. We want students to put some level of effort. And then as you start to go through, it's really like the stress, and it's all of these adjacent pieces with the process that really stink. How can we limit those? And I think a lot of those come back to the colleges themselves and how they process applicants, how they set up a process, how much pricing transparency they want to bring into this, how quickly they want to let students know. I think the piece that I didn't bring up here, because I really don't know how this is going to shape out, is testing. And I have lots of personal opinions on it that are equally right, wrong, founded, unfounded. So
Evolving. Let's just say evolving.
it's evolving. They're evolving, and I've seen a couple companies that are out there that are talking about a really interesting one called Merit First, and it's a platform that is for basically corporate recruiting and attracting qualified candidates, and how can we actually evaluate our candidates based on merit and their intellect. And now what I don't understand is what makes that assessment better than other assessments out there. And on paper, it makes sense that AI should enhance how we do assessment and has the potential to remove bias from assessment and make this really fair and merit-based way to evaluate applicants. I'm interested to see what it's like in this recruiting landscape, but outside of that, the honest answer is I have no idea if there's going to be something that is catalyzed by AI that makes some type of assessment landscape that everyone is happy about and thinks works and thinks is effective. I have no idea.
These are some really fresh ideas, Sam. I have a feeling you've got a whole lot more. So we're going to delay that for the next time we meet.
I love it. Episode 900.
900.
Episode 900. As ever, we could talk with you all day. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation.
If listeners would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can always connect with me on LinkedIn, Sam Bernstein, search Loper. Always a great way to reach out and connect. Definitely let me know if you were listening to the episode. It's always fun to see a connection like that. And then you can always drop me a note on email as well, sam@getloper.com. Or if there's something general, hello@getloper.com. Sometimes it'll be a much quicker way to a response because there's more responsible people on our team checking that one as well.
Awesome. We hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as we did. Be sure to join us for another fascinating topic and guest on the next Tests and the Rest.
Did you enjoy this episode as much as we did? Find expanded links and more for this and all of our episodes at our show page at testsandtherest.com. While you're there, be sure to explore everything the larger TestBright site has to offer, including real, expert, unbiased answers to the toughest admissions testing questions. Of course, we'd love for you to rate, review, and subscribe to Tests and the Rest on your favorite podcast platform. If there's a topic or guest you'd like us to feature, just let us know and spread the word.